Hey Nikhil, welcome to the All Walks of Life podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure certainly all mine. Thank you for having me here, Ishan.
So just before we get started, just let the listeners, let the viewers know a little bit about yourself, about your organization, first of all, I guess.
So I'm Nikhil. I'm the founder CEO of Zlait Sports Management. We're predominantly a sports management organization based out of Delhi here in India. We work in athlete management, we work in sports infrastructure, we work in sports consultancy, and a whole host of offerings that are predominantly centered around sports, with football being one of the key component of our offerings here.
Right. So I've had a few people on my podcast who do work in sport as well. So something I generally like to ask these people is that what was the driving factor? Why did you start working in sport? What was that? Was there a particular moment or series of moments really? What was it for you?
So my father is a cricket player. He played for Punjab University as well. Fairly decent cricketer, played with some of the bigger names in Indian cricket. I grew up loving cricket. I wanted to be an athlete as well, but there are lots of shortcomings. He also wanted to make sure that I take care of my education well. So I continued studying and not focusing so much on sport. And I've said this before as well. There was a movie called Jerry Maguire. And when I saw that movie, I said, hang on, I just don't have to be a sports person to be in sport. And that's where I kind of started thinking about sports management. And I struggled my way along. But even during my engineering days, my MBA days, I spoke to a lot of people even afterwards, and they said, what do you want to do in your life? And I said, I want to be a sports management professional. And there wasn't too much of sports management back then. And I said, some way or the other, I will find a way in. And that's how sports management came about. And yes, I always wanted to be one. It's something that I don't consider myself, working for.
Right.
It's a passion. And yes, it's a business as well, but that's what we're doing here.
What do you think it is about that particular movie? Because I feel quite a few people who do work in sport or the sports management industry have sort of referenced that particular movie. Do you feel there needs to be a lot more, let's say, movies or books written on this particular profession as it is, so that people can then look forward to saying that, oh, there's an archetypical thing, so that's something I can aspire towards? Do you buy that?
What happens, look, back then we didn't know of avenues in the sporting management, sporting marketing scene. It's way back. That movie, of course there's Tom Cruise. So any movie where Tom Cruise features in, a lot of young boys and girls look up to him. That's one. Two, it basically portrayed sports management or sports agents in a light that was very realistic. Otherwise, if you see a lot of other movies, you'd find sports agents being, showcased as sharks and not maybe the nicest people around, or, there's always a problem there in terms of how they portrayed. That movie, it kind of portrayed the real sense of how he loses so many of his clients and yet makes a comeback. It gives you hope, and also it kind of has a feel-good factor about how you're single athlete, and when he does that, and how they're so strong together as people and not just as a product and a seller that a lot of people think about business. That particular movie has that strong bond between the athlete and the agent, which I think finds a lot of stickiness with people who are watching it.
I think you touched upon a really important point there, because I've spoken to a few agents, sports agents really, and some of them really talked about this particular aspect, that you really need the buy-in from the player, that you're there with them or whoever you are representing in that sense, that you're not just there for, let's say, a short-term fix almost, and you're there to see how the trajectory goes. Like, how important do you feel that is? Or like, just walk me through any of your experiences really.
Everybody has a different journey. My journey overall in life and philosophy is to take something from somewhere to somewhere, right? Which typically in your case, you always want it from lower to higher. Does it always happen? No, it doesn't. It's how you feel about the thing. Then again, there are various stages of an athlete's life. Can we take him at the absolute, when he's 12 years, 14 years, 15 years? Not really. My identification typically would begin at 18, 19, when he's played a certain level of sport. But he's not, he's not the star that he's hoping for, or the great or the good athlete that he's hoping for. So typically our athletes are ones that we've picked really early. There are only few of them, so that we're able to establish that a personal bond with them as to what kind of people are they. Look, talent alone never matters. You've got to have more than talent. You need to have the quality that I'm looking for is always resilience. Does an athlete have resilience? Because during his tough days, his talent will not carry him through. His resilience will. I'm almost slurring there. So that's the first thing that we look for. Once we've established that he has a certain base level of talent, he's played, a certain level of football or any sport, and we start working with him, that's where we are convinced that he will reach a certain level. We are convinced. It's not necessary that others will. The other kind of athletes that we work with are the ones who've probably reached a certain level and then have had a fall. And that could be for various reasons, the right opportunity, just plain simple bad luck, injuries, or for any other factor, or somebody who's hit a stone wall and is not even able to kind of carry through. But through various metrics, which are emotional, which are, performance-based metrics, you're able to establish that you can take it forth. And those are the kind of people that we typically work for. There have been lots and lots of examples. We've signed a player who was playing for the India national team at an Asian Games. 6 months on, he didn't have a professional contract. Oh, wow. He was playing the regional league. We signed somebody like him. We made sure he makes a comeback to the ISL. We signed a player who was one of the most upcoming players in India, and then for about 3 years didn't play much football at the club that he was in. And all along we believed in his talent, and we continued pushing for his talent forth. We work with numerous such examples. We've had a player who's kind of stayed in the second division of football all his life, and then we sign him on, bring him on to play in the I-League. By the second year of that I-League experience, he was the I-League goalkeeper of the season. Oh, wow. So things like those, these are not, it's satisfying for us. It's not that everybody knows about it, and they're still work in progress. I watched Rafa Nadal's interview yesterday, I think, and it said, he said, I will go back and I will work hard to be better. And that's Rafa Nadal. If he thinks like that, then there are lots of others who've not reached anywhere. Yeah. So we're all trying. We're trying to make things better.
There's several things to unpick here. Firstly, I feel I was at this football agent summit conference in London, and I got the opportunity to speak to David Ospina's agent. And what he said was that even though he was with Ospina from the onset, from when he was in Colombia and playing in the regional leagues there, he almost had to keep in touch with him and almost just see how he is, and things external to football as well. True. Things such as how his family is doing, how he's settling in London or the other cities that he is. Because when he moves from Colombia to, let's say, a European league, there are agents who are almost just tapping his phone to say that, would you want to move on here because we can give you XXX. True. So the thing is, like, because what I feel most people would probably have an image of agents would be that they're from the outside and they probably just make a deal, get their money and move away. But how important is it to just have that relationship that you're almost, I mean, I don't know the word here, but maybe a brother relationship or a family relationship that you have with them. So how taxing is that? Like, how much time does that require?
So just the guideline to be an agent is either you're a lawyer or you're an agent, which is, you've professionally cleared exams or you pay something. The third one is your family. So technically you can be an agent of a player if you qualify for any of these three things. So you don't have to be an agent if you're family. Right. They believe if you're father, brother, you can manage a person. the footballing or any sport part of it is a certain aspect. As I previously said, you've got to understand what kind of a person that person is. What my belief in, you're right, football's a increasingly commercial sport today. Once somebody's come from Colombia and he's a great, decent player, let's not say great, let's say he's decent, there would be a lot of people wanting to bring him into the fold. It's unfortunately or fortunately, that's how the
way it's done.
The way it's done. What you've got to focus on is basics, which is your relationship with him. What kind of a person are you? What kind of a person is he? What do you think works for him in his personal life? You've got to be his mother sometimes. Sometimes you've got to be his father or her father or brother. Sometimes they're performing really well. You've got to tell them, hang on, don't hang yourself in the clouds, come back. It's game by game. Sometimes they're down in the pits and you've got to say, look, I believe in you, believe in yourself, because nobody else will. It's you who has to believe in yourself. And then there are other times when you do things like run their contracts, negotiate their commercials. The more important aspect of it is you're also looking after a lot of things that athletes themselves might not be capable of. Some of them are exceptionally smart, they're well educated, they come from backgrounds wherein they can handle money, they can handle finances, they can handle accounts, they could do a lot of these things. Most of them, unfortunately, football is an industrial sport, which means you come from places wherein you don't have experience of managing most of these things, which is when you can talk. If some athletes, it's your work to kind of go to them and say, hang on, you make say an X amount, you can spend half of that X, but put half of that X into an investment, or put it somewhere where you can utilize it once your playing days are over. And we do that with a lot of athletes, even in India, whereas that's not the norm here. But just to give you an example, we have a very, very promising young boy who plays for Hyderabad FC. He's invested a fair bit of sum into making a football facility back home.
Oh wow!
So it's a turf where people will play. So it's a form of, one, he's bought the land, two, he's putting together a club there where people can come, pay and play. So that's, there'll be coaching, there'll be tournaments, there'll be a whole host of things there. But he's consciously decided to make that decision, and we've aided him in doing so.
I mean, I don't think many people realize like how short an athlete's career is in that aspect, because obviously it's probably different in an Indian context because the money isn't great when you talk about Indian football. But still, when you talk about that, the viewers from the outside, the fans feel that, oh, he's playing an X amount of games and getting X amount of money for it, which is great. Like, what can be a better life? But what we have to understand is, after, let's say, 35, 36 at the maximum, these players really have to find another source of income to fulfill themselves. So that's great, because I've heard people talk about that, and if you get these players actually investing in their roots, I feel that almost brings them a much larger sense of community towards the people they've been brought up with.
True.
I'm not so sure about the other parts of the country, but I'm well versed with, let's say, the Northeast, because I've worked at an organization before who worked quite prominently there. And what I see with the players who come out of the Northeast is that even if they prosper in other states around India, let's say if they play for Bengaluru or what have you, they generally like to come back and settle in, let's say, the Northeast. So why do you think that is? Like, why do you think that the players from a certain region have an affinity to...
Look, I think that's all across the country, barring the metropolis. Because we've grown up in bigger cities, we have an affinity towards bigger city. We don't have an affinity to a region that we come from. Say, for example, I'm originally from Punjab, brought up in Pune, but we've been living our lives in big cities for so long that that's a lifestyle choice that we make to stay here, which is not the case in the athletes' careers, because most of their families back home, they must have ventured out really early, which could be 12, 13, 14, 18. But predominantly, once they're done, they've moved so many clubs that they haven't really called a city their own. So that's why they move back home, because that's really their home. Excuse me. So I think it's a Keralite will always go back to wherever his house is. Somebody from Tamil Nadu will do that as well. Yes, somebody who might have played for Bengaluru for 7-8 years, like I think Sunil Chhetri, he might or might not prefer to stay back there, but because he's played for so long, he stayed in that city. So if you have played for Manchester United for far so long, then if you decide to choose to stay back there, it's understandable. But if you played almost as a journeyman all your life, then that anchor point comes from your community. And that's what happens to football players or athletes more often than not here in India. Also, to kind of say, the money that a lot of footballers are now getting here in India is not less. So you'd be surprised that a lot of them do not choose to go play in the Scandinavian leagues or maybe some of the other tier 2 European leagues, is because the money that they get here is fairly decent and they might not be able to earn that with taxes, etc. back there.
Yeah.
And the life's much tougher. The lives here are comfortable.
That's for sure, and that's slowly growing, and that's for the good, really. But you'd probably know this much better than I do. But then the pool of players that we have who do play professionally in India is so small if you look at it, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you have a sort of vision, if you were, let's say, the AIFF president, of how you would want to structure the Indian football structure, really? I've spoken to others and they've talked about, and this is something maybe I'm in the favor of, is something that's similar in Brazil, for that matter, where they have regional leagues which are very strong, and they then those teams that do well in the regional leagues sort of go on to play in the second division, third division. We sort of have that in India right now, but I don't know if we can compare, let's say, the Goan league with, let's say, a league in some other state.
Right. One, can the AFF president do everything? I doubt. So, I'd not go and say, what if I was the AFF president? Because it's a big country. We're very democratic in a certain sense. It almost sounds like not the nicest thing, but because, all of us, including you and me, we can differ on certain views and go about doing a certain thing differently. If you ask me, there are examples across the world, various examples across the world of how football can be structured. Does that answer fit India? No, it doesn't. Because we are a very varied country. Every 200 kilometers, our language changes, our food changes, the way we look, the way we talk, the way it all changes. So can we have a solution that's worked in other countries will work here? No, it will not. The sport itself has some basic rules. And that's the reason why cricket is popular in India, why football is popular in Brazil, why Europe produces the most number of players, or why Argentina or Venezuela or Colombia or Uruguay or Brazil produces so many players, and that's culture. Can culture be induced? No, it can't be. It takes sizable period of time, which might be 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. So you will not be able to produce it right away, but certain places do have that culture. Northeast, West Bengal, Kerala, Goa, pockets here and there as well. What can work is a lot of kids need to play the sport. And for kids to play that sport, what do they need? They need infrastructure. It doesn't have to be fancy places, but they just need good, secure places to be able to play the sport. They need passion, they need heroes, but predominantly you need a lot of kids playing the sport. There should be an avenue and opportunity for them to go out and play the sport first. Two, to play that sport competitively. So micro leagues, mini leagues, all across the country, spread. It could be started by you, it could be started by me. Not trying to control them, but just letting people play. You could be paying a certain fees, you could be playing for free. It could be pickup matches, so you have a lot of kids playing sport. And that's what, if you take a certain example, that's what happens in Brazil. Everybody plays the sport. Two, you need coaches. You need good coaches. You need them in a huge number. That will be my mantra number 2. If to have a lot of these younger people who are coming across who know a little bit of the sport, to be armed with coaching badges, or at least having some basic information of how to coach kids, which is predominantly to allow them to play, not keep making them running around grounds, just keep running. They have, kids have their aerobic capacity is quite high, and you know that about. You don't need to get kids to run to increase their. You need it for me or for you, not for them. So coaches basically basically take care of if you arm somebody as a coach, he will take care of his own coaching. As in, he'll find 20 kids, he'll find 50 kids, he'll find it somewhere, and if he's enterprising as well, or he'll find a club. The third mantra in ecosystem is to have as many clubs as possible. They could be with a budget of 1 lakh, with 50 lakhs, with 1 crore, with 30 crores, have clubs. And that club could be structured anyway. It could be in your DDA, sports club. It could be a professional football club. It could be an academy. It could be anything. It could be a pay and play. It could be an NGO. Don't restrict it. Let clubs form. Let them play competitively. And they could find solutions among themselves if you have a lot of clubs. If you had 20 clubs in Gurgaon, they will find a solution for themselves to play amongst them. Sadly, you don't have as many, right? People might play. So, be inclusive about it. Have as many players coming in. Then there are, of course, other things. One of the reasons cricket grew is because our grandfathers, grandmothers, father, mother, parents, they knew some bit about cricket, right? So if you today want to learn a forward defensive stroke, can your father teach it?
Sort of, yeah.
He can give you the basics. Yeah. There's been so much of exposure to television as well that they'll be able to teach it to you. Similarly, with the English Premier League, etc., a lot of young boys and girls have seen how things are done right at the top. Now, if they had parents who could tell them, look, this is how you dribble, this is how you run with the ball, why don't you do these exercises? Why don't you do it in, just play? That's a solution to up the intellectual capacity of football or a sport, any sport. And so these are 5-6 things, 3 things I've told you. You could be more structured at the top level, have 3-4 leagues, then have a regional league, city league, go as micro as possible with sport. That's the way of growing sport more. If it was on me, and of course, none of it I can affect as an individual. What I can do is I can have a policy, or I could say, encourage people to play. Can we make playgrounds accessible? Can I work towards it? And of course, at the top, I need to ensure that, there are heroes for them, that the national team is doing well. It's not an easy solution. You can pick and choose from all across the world, and I'd say pick what the Japanese are doing. Have a 50-year plan. Don't plan for tomorrow. Don't say we will qualify. I want to see the country qualify for the World Cup. When I moved into the business, that's what my goal was. Now my goal is have more and more Indians to play the sport, and that take care of a lot of things themselves.
I think you touched upon a brilliant point there, because I worked at this organization called World One Sports, and they were the first ones to come up with the baby league in Bishnupur and Champai, I think.
That's right.
And what I found fascinating was something you just touched upon. Just let the kids play.
Yes.
And if you look at, I'm going off to examples again, but like the South American countries, they may not have the best of infrastructure there, but just the fact that the kids are playing, let's say 50 games in a season, that's a lot. I don't know if any semi-professional player plays that, but the South American kids are playing it.
True.
Even if they're just playing 3-a-side, 5-a-side, or what have you, but they're just getting touches on the ball, and that's what's crucial, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I think what Varun and World One did was brilliant, to go to Mizoram and do that, for an agency to be kind of ahead of the curve rather than an organization there. And thankfully, Mizoram is a place which is open with Tetya there. Those are guys that are slightly ahead of the curve in terms of what is to be done. The idea and the thought, of course, on baby leagues has been picked from South America. That's where Richard Hood, who was then the head of sport here, development here, youth development here at the AFF, picked the idea of baby leagues there. And you're right, their infrastructure is, kids don't worry about if they're playing on pebbles. They're so competitive, they know that's their way out of the misery that life is for them. And as I said, most of them are from industrial families. More so in South America, you barely come across a middle class guy or a high class guy there. And that's the reason why Mizoram's done well, because there are lots and lots of young kids just playing football.
Yeah.
Can you give them high? Now, let me say, how can Mizoram take it higher? They have a very low number of trained football coaches. That could certainly be increased. Whereas, you look across in Manipur, there are far more A-licensed coaches. And is licensing the only solution? No.
It gives you a good parameter.
But it gives you a good, there's some education. I don't want to become, let's only allow coaches with certificates to coach. No, you can be a coach, I can be a coach without coaching badges if we have that understanding of what is to be done. And that understanding you can get better when you go for coaching licenses. It just helps you makes you more organized and structured.
I mean, you worked at Shillong Lajong, and I mean, just firstly, just a little bit about this whole baby leagues concept. Do you feel, I find the Northeast to be similar, let's say in culture, to South America, because I find football almost ingrained in them. So let's say in North India, people may talk about cricket in that sense. Football is that sort of sport that almost families talk about. So do you feel that, yes, it's worked very well in Mizoram and these places, but if that same model was then implemented in a place like Punjab or a place like Rajasthan, do you think that the results would be the same, or it'll take a lot more time?
No, they will not. As I spoke about culture, that culture needs to exist. Does it exist in Punjab? In a lot of places. You could go to a Mahilpur, you can go to even Chandigarh, you can go to a couple of other places, Pagwara and all of these places. There's a culture of football.
Right.
But is it all pervasive? No, it's not. Is it, Rajasthan at one point of time was doing really well in football.
Yeah.
Is it still there? No, it's not. Culture takes time. But what culture, you can cover culture with organization, sometimes with funding and money, but most times by being organized, keeping your plans simple, and then growing. And every place in India has a different solution. You can never say this worked there, so I will work it here as well. We try to do that because as human beings, that's the easiest thing to do, but it will not work. Tomorrow you tell a Mizo boy that there's an agency or a club that's coming in to have a look at you. They understand at maybe 10, 12, 13, 14 what professional football means, right? A kid in Delhi might not understand that. Though I must say there are a lot of younger kids in schools, etc., are now preferring to play football more than cricket, right? You cannot compete with cricket in a country like India. It's religion. But can you be the 1 to 10 cricket and then 11, 12, 13, 14, all the other sports? Yes, you can be. And that's a great win. You're growing every day. Don't try and, upstage cricket in 1 day or 2 days or 1 year or 15 years. Try going on your own trajectory and, we will see success.
Do you think any sport can even compete, let's say, in a country where, let's say, there's one sport so predominant, like cricket, as you mentioned, where it's almost religion, right, as you rightly put, that even in other countries, when I look at it, it's generally one sport that's predominant, and then the other sports lag behind. Do you think that's always going to be the case, or are you fine with, let's say, there are a set of cricket fans and then there are a set of football fans, and those people can be different?
You look at China, that sport has been basketball. They're trying to grow other sports. Of course, table tennis, badminton, a lot of
racket
running,
sports,
racket sports, extremely popular, but never will reach that. Every sport has a factor. How much of athletics fan can you be? You're not going to watch athletics every day. You're not going to watch 100 meters every day.
Yeah.
You might train for it, 100 days, but compete only for 10. So every sport has an advantage. With football, you can not competing with cricket is out of the question.
Right.
At least in our lifetimes. Don't think about it. In Brazil, if you told anybody there are other sports that do well, they laugh at you.
Yeah.
Right? Similarly, there are a few examples of multi-sport countries, but they're there. You'd find Serbia doing well in football, they do well in basketball, they do well in a lot of other volleyball, lots of other sports, but similar kind of sports. There's historic data for it as well. And then, of course, there could be outliers, like Gopi Chand could set up an academy and bring 10, 12, 15 of the top 100 players in one place. You can do that, but it's an outlier. It's not culture. It is tough. And it's not because of cricket. It's just, it's because hockey was popular, football was popular. What have you done with it? There are lots and lots of different reasons why what's happened has happened. What you can do is control now, or controlling is a big word. Try and affecting things. And if that moves, then things will move. But can you compete with cricket? You must not think of it that way. Cricket, anything that takes people towards sports is a good thing.
Right. Don't
think of it, cricket ke fans hain, cricket mein media hai. Your second question, I think so. But there are sports lovers on the whole as well. Lots and lots and lots of sports lovers on the whole. They could have one sport that they have close affinity to, but somebody spoke of Asian Le Mans today, and while I was not following it, I knew about it. I said, yeah, the one which Narayan Karthikeyan is racing for an. And they said, yeah, that's right. So I have a sense of semblance of something that's happening around. What's happening in Australian Open. Now I might not watch them all. Predominantly, I watch only football, but I have a sense of it. So it's, let's not fight that war of. There are different types of people, right? Cricket, football, hockey. There are guys who follow rugby. Some people are ardent golf followers. Anybody who follows and plays sport is brilliant. It makes for a healthier living for all of us.
Something I've been generally thinking about is when we talk about where am I going with this? I was trying to connect it with your days at Shillong Lajong, because I wanted to just talk to you about your experiences there, because from the little I've grasped of it, the videos I've watched, some of the books I've read about it, it's the same thing which we're talking about. It's the culture. So I'm not too sure about if people are allowed to smoke or have or just enjoy themselves in stadiums in, let's say, North India and stuff. But if you look at the regional places in the Northeast, that's a very prominent culture that's there. Maybe it's dying out right now because of the regulations that have been put in place, but it's almost a way of life there, and it's more than football that people can go and enjoy themselves. And if the football's being played, then well and good.
True. So there's organized football and there's not organized football. If you were sitting in Shillong and somebody lights up a cigarette and starts smoking, what are you going to do about it? Right? So but there's regulation. They're not supposed to smoke. It comes under the same rules that a North Indian or West Indian stadium will come. If somebody's having koi, which is the betel nut, now that's what are you going to do about it, right? Of course, nobody's had alcohol. They're not having alcohol in the perimeter, but there are chances that somebody is good and happy when they walk into the stadium. Is it a good thing or bad thing? That society overall. What are the things that you're worried about out of these things? Is that people lose control? They do things which are not, which are unsafe. There are only two, which is unsafe for women, or there's violence. Both of those things don't typically happen there in stadiums, etc. There, women have a very, very good place in the society there. The leaders of their families, and very rarely would you find stadium scuffles, etc., breaking out there. Those would be a worry here in the North India, both of them. If somebody was coming in. So, do I have an opinion on it? No, I don't, because I've seen equal number of scuffles, etc., happening in the West. In hooliganism.
It's a big thing, isn't it? Football hooliganism.
It's huge, and it's the same in South America as well. The fights, etc. So is it a good thing? Not really. You don't want to go to, but that's passion.
See, that's the good and bad of sport, though, isn't it? It's like when
it's passion.
Exactly.
And that passion becomes very innate when somebody's not in their senses. So it's, I have a mixed reaction about it. Which Shillong especially, we've never had a problem that way. We've just had passionate fans come to the stadium, enjoy their football. They wanted to support a minnow beating the bigger teams. That's what their story was, Shillong. And because there are lots and lots and lots and lots of kids playing the sport, it's easier to bring in those kids into a formal setup and train them to be professional footballers. It's about the opportunity. There might be better footballers everywhere else, but the ones that have got that opportunity, the ones, a lot of them fall by the wayside as well. But there were some who took it and grew.
Right. What were your experiences there working as a sports management official? Because I think that was your first role as a sports in some capacity in sports, let's say.
So I joined in as a chief operating officer for Anglian Management Group.
Okay.
Which started off with their sports wing then. Because the company had a stake in Shillong Lajong, or the owners who so that's why I was given a place on the board as well. But yes, in all practical terms, that was my first experience. That's my start in Indian football. Uh, I don't have words to express the joy I had working for Shillong Lajong. In more ways than other, it was a path-breaking club, or is a path-breaking club, and things that we did there, I'm extremely proud of it. Whether it's ensuring a lot of fan activity or supporters activity. The word I like more than fan is supporter. Somebody who supports you. Fans is slightly different thing. There's no two-way about it. In a small place like Shillong, when you move about, you meet people, and everybody has an opinion. Now, whether you choose to take it or you don't take it, but you still have to hear those things. Not so much as me, as members of the team, etc. Somebody who speaks the language, they'll always tell you what the fans or the supporters talk about, right? Sometimes they talk about saying, "Oh well, you don't want to win. That's the reason you only play with kids. The foreigners or the international players that you have aren't good because you don't pay. Where are you taking all the money?" Things like those. And it's very hard to explain that the club's barely surviving.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no avenue for...
But that's good, isn't it? In some sense, because it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a place that they want the team to do well, right?
100%. Look, a lot of football clubs, in my view, take a dim view of criticism. We overall take a dim view of criticism, right? If I want to grow, then I've got to at least hear criticism.
Of course.
Be sure of the criticism that's coming my way, to wait and say, yes, maybe he's right. So if you have something for me, it's not necessary I know it all. So for example, you can teach me a lot about podcasting. And now, if I say, no, I know it all because I've done 5 podcasts, then I'm stupid, right? Similarly, you don't need to take a dim view of everything that's being said. Sometimes they don't know, the supporters might not know the exact scene that's happening.
Right.
So their stand is purely from a performance and a view that's seen on the field. Sometimes a lot of it is happening in the background. Now, there's no harm in listening to it. Sometimes they might tell you that player is rubbish. And for a fact, because your numbers, your view, your technical experts seem to suggest, no, he's doing a fine job. A fine job, he's what you call a value for money proposition. An athlete or a player, a position. Typically, a striker, if he's not scoring, he's bad. And that a fan knows. So it's the most simple metric. But sometimes strikers don't score because they don't receive support.
Yeah.
Sometimes, a defensive midfielder is only tackling people. And people look at him and say, he can't make a pass. What he does is he breaks play. So you got to understand out of the criticism that, no, this is not right. But sometimes they're right. There's, you can say, yes, maybe we can be better. Or it can be, why are you always marketing things? You're like a marketing club. Now, there could be 2 sides to it. One, we've got to do our content better so it doesn't seem like a marketing spiel. 2, look, we have to do this to grow the club, to grow the supporters in terms of the brands that are supporting the club. All of this needs to be done. So one needs to have a look at criticism in a constructive way as well. You can't take all of it because it weighs you down, but take some of it, have a filter, bring something down. Everybody at Manchester United says, if you earn 500 million or whatever they earn, put it all back in the club. Now, so you can never make fans happy unless and until you're winning. And only one team wins. United fans are not going to be happy if you're going to be second to Man City or second to Liverpool. Yeah. So understandable. That's the standard that you set for your club.
I think it's twofold. And I think Arsene Wenger talked about it in some sense. He said that the respect for expertise is dying out in society.
Yeah.
So he was often asked about why aren't Arsenal spending too much, or why aren't players being played in certain positions or what have you.
True.
And he felt that because of the prominence of FIFA, Football Manager, and these sorts of games, everyone's almost an armchair football manager in that sense.
True.
And everyone has, as you mentioned, everyone has an opinion in that sense, and and if you are passionate about something, be it sport, be it politics, you want to voice it, and you want your opinion to be out there, and that just translates into, let's say, if it's taken to the extreme, hooliganism or what have you, but it can be productive as well, as you're putting it.
He's right, but not entirely as well.
Right.
The reason I say that is because The reason I say that is Arsenal as a club, and to take his specific example, if you ask me where would you put your money if it was the stock market, I'd put it in Arsenal, because during his time, they were very frugal. They built a stadium, such a huge stadium. I think they're the most expensive tickets anywhere. And
all around Europe, all around the world actually.
And if you paid that kind of money to watch a team like that, I'll be sad otherwise if I was a member. But if I had to put money on on the stock market in terms of how they ran that business, they were super.
Wow, phenomenal.
And very few managers in the world kind of take that leadership position as Wenger took, right? Because he was an economics professor as well. He understood the economics of it well. Every player he bought it at low value, sold it. So I think the club was ingrained in him. He almost ran it like it was his own club. I would do that, but I don't think fans appreciate losing as much as they did. I hope they appreciate him now more, because they thought when he was going away, every match there would be Wenger out and things like those. But they appreciate what he was doing with the club back then. With the kind of money that they spent on commercialization, with the stadium, I think he did reasonably well. There was a point in time when a lot of money came into football, and he found it extremely tough to compete with it.
Yeah.
Right? That it happened with City coming in, with Chelsea coming in. It just, when there's money beyond reason being poured into it, when I say reason, I don't mean, I'm sure the City group has great thought process behind what they're doing. They're looking for world domination. There was a reason why Chelsea was doing what they were doing. But there's money that came in that he found it very difficult to compete with.
But it's also different to the model, let's say, Wenger was putting forward, right? As you're mentioning, it was all intrinsic. Whatever the club generated was put in. And when we are talking about, let's say, the City Football Group or Roman Abramovich's Chelsea, it's almost external money that's being pulled in from other businesses and then being put into football. Obviously, now with things like FFP, which have been put in place, it's sort of been leveled out. But even then, there are ways to
the purpose of football club is to win.
Yeah.
If Wenger had unending money, he would do the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? Unfortunately, he didn't. Not that Chelsea had unending money, but Chelsea wanted to showcase themselves as well. If you're a new owner, you don't want to sit at the back end, and especially if you're Abramovich, you don't want to sit at the back seat and wait for teams to thrash you and you wait for 5, 6, 7 years. His philosophy is now, we win now. What do you need to do for it? Similarly, maybe the City Group said the same thing to Pep as well. Now you bring in a coach like Pep, and then you provide him with not so great players, he's not going to enjoy it, right? So you've got to get him the best. Wenger had a different philosophy, and he kept the team competitive for the longest period of time, right? But those are philosophies.
Yeah.
With football, with FFP, I have my own views. Nothing is perfect like in the world. The world, life, and football are not perfect. So people are trying. Some succeed in something, some don't succeed. But that's life. You've got to move on.
What are your thoughts on FFP though?
Oh, what are my thoughts? I don't have thoughts. I'm increasingly. I increasingly don't watch a lot of European football anymore. I follow stray examples, so I'll see, was it Nordzeland or Midtjylland who followed a different philosophy into
Moneyball.
Moneyball is a simple example,
yeah.
But they did a lot more number crunching,
a data
driven thing. So they've done something different. I follow a lot of, not follow, but read a lot about the French football. How do they produce players? There was a time when Porto, Sporting, and what another team was there? The 3 teams, Benfica. 3 of them, were clocking like 500 million in player sales in 5 years. There was a time like that. So what are they doing so differently? Why German teams, why they don't need to buy, and then they're still competing with a team like like Bayern Munich. So I follow those stray examples here and then, and then of course there was a time we'd watch Champions League 1 o'clock at night, 1:30 at night. Now it's become a little tough. So even when Liverpool's playing, the first thing I do in the morning is look at the scores, and that's about it. If they've done well, you watch 6-7 minutes of highlights. Thankfully, the Premier League happens in a good time. There are times when I'm watching 3 games in a day. There are 2 I-League games, there's 1 ISL game. you can't watch so much of football.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a family, you have work, you've got to feed everybody as well. People are making efforts.
Right.
Is it perfect? It's not.
Right.
So hopefully it, iteratively gets better.
So, but that's interesting. You've touched upon several, let's say, trends that some of these modern clubs are putting forward. Let's say if you're talking about City, and then they're trying to put like sister clubs all around the world.
Yeah.
Or with I think the person at Midtjylland's name's Ramis and Anderson, something along those lines.
Ankerson.
Yes.
Ackerson. He wrote a book as well, The Talent Code, I think.
Okay.
Am I right? I don't know.
It's modeled on I think Billy Beane's philosophy. Obviously, that's in part because but
so I'm a huge fan, and I've said that a number of times, of Soccernomics first and Moneyball then. Simon Cooper and Stefan, brilliant book. I think I've never gifted as many books as much as I've gifted Soccernomics. The kind of things that they talk about are phenomenal. And Moneyball that's another movie I saw and said, wow.
That's really
I saw that movie and I was like, I kept watching it.
I've seen it multiple times actually. Yeah,
I watch it every summer. Every time it's on any channel, I watch it, even if it's a little bit, and I know the dialogues verbatim now. And there are good teams, there are bad teams, and there's 50 feet of shit.
Yeah.
And then there's us. I mean, it's incredible how somebody could portray that. It's incredible. So I watched that.
But it's the same thing that's tying into what you were saying previously as well. That you need a large variety of clubs, be it whatever standard they may be. If they're semi-amateur, if they're professional, if they are competing in the same league, almost those teams which are at the bottom will almost find ways to compete.
Exactly. A lot of debates. And I would hear things from, why are Indian clubs buying players?
Right.
And I said, there's nothing wrong in buying players because they're buying players, somebody's selling players, right? If it's the Mohun Bagans of the world and the Kerala Blasters or Bengaluru buying players, it's brilliant. Or Mumbai City buying players, it's brilliant because somebody will sell them, right? And once a Neroka or a Trau or a Lajong or an Aizawl understand that model well, it gives them an incentive to keep producing players.
Yeah.
Right? Which means it gives them an incentive to have a very strong grassroots program. Or, grassroots is a word that's used very loosely, but I'm saying a development
program. Yeah.
And if there are 200, 300, 500 clubs, they will all find their niche. Somewhere or the other. Somebody might just take money and run that club. So everybody who comes in pays. They cross-subsidize some players, but it's running, right? They have some places. So we've got to find your own model. Like you find your own model with businesses, every club can find their own models. But the ecosystem has to be robust for it.
I just feel it's just difficult for clubs to accept that they're almost becoming a cherry farm in that sense where players get picked off. But they have to almost understand that it's
I'd
almost
be very happy if I ran a club and everybody cherry picked, as long as I get fees for it, right? Take them all away, but pay us money so that I can produce more, which is what we did at Lajong as well, right? We were very happy if somebody got picked because we knew how that was done. And again, there's never a surety. You get 100 kids or you get 20, 25 kids in various age groups. Each year, iteratively, some of them will go out, somebody from the outside will move in.
Yeah.
And unfortunately or fortunately, that's how professional football is. It is ruthless.
Yeah.
So only the best of the best of the best, even at a local level, will survive.
And I think the fans start becoming accepting of it as well, because I was speaking to this person, he's a Brentford fan, and I go to university with him, and he said that because it's the same owner who runs Midtjylland, who runs Brentford. So he said that in the beginning he was a little uncomfortable to get used to because all your best players are getting picked off at the end of the season. But then if you're seeing constant progress and getting a lot more money for the deals you're doing, then why not? Why not?
On the top of the championship?
Something like that. Yeah.
And I heard that they've not lost a game for a long time.
Yeah.
They sold 6 of their best talents.
Yeah. I think they bought Ivan Toney from I think Preston or another club of that sort, and he's top goal scorer right now, and they paid like $1,400,000 for him.
More power to them. More power to clubs like these. More power to the clubs that that make us dream
Yeah.
When you watch Man City play, it's like a dream. When you watch Liverpool play, now it's a dream. Barcelona was. And everybody goes in that, crest and trough. It's more power to all clubs that are running with a philosophy which is strong. And I don't mean the playing philosophy. I mean the philosophy of the club overall, however they want to run. Football is a very, very tough business to be in. Or sport overall is a tough business to be in. So more power to them. To all of them.
I'm gonna be guessing that you're gonna be in favor of, let's say, the European model of the way sport is governed compared to the American model. Obviously, in the American model, in context to, let's say, basketball or something of that sort, where they have a draft system similar to the IPL.
Right. I don't have any model that I love more than the other.
Right.
Why is because there's beauty in every model. I mean, imagine you finish last in the NBA and you get the first pick. So by the end of it, everybody's trying to finish last, so we get the best pick out of it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I mean, it's not the best. What happens is we're all tuned in a certain way to believe something is right, something is wrong. We're all trained that way, right? Getting great marks is the best thing. How you get them doesn't matter. What do you might be right, might be wrong. I mean, I'm not saying. On models, US is as a market, it's...
Oh, wow, yeah.
You dream of being in a market like that, right? I mean, players are respected, the kind of money that they make. College level, university level sport is at a level that you cannot imagine. School level football is, soccer schools making profits for your club. Some examples somewhere, and then of course you look at the Brazilian model and say, I look at even small little details. How open are you to today? Say for example, you're an Indian player and you're really good. Somebody in Laos says, I will sign you, and you'll start wondering, how's Laos? Can I go there? Can I play? Will it be comfortable? Will I get food? Can I accommodate? There's only fish there. I don't eat fish. I'm giving you examples, and then to think of how mentally strong the Brazilian players are. Or Argentinian players are, or Latin American players are, to say we have to venture out to sustain, to play that sport for a career. I look at a lot of European players who've played in brilliant places and have come to, say in India.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. Sometimes we go for a holiday and say, I cannot survive here.
Yeah.
For somebody to come that far and do well it's an interesting...
And some of these players have almost spent more time abroad than they have in their home countries as well.
Yeah, imagine that. It sounds so exotic, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not, imagine you being out of your house since you were 15, 16. And of course you make a life for yourself outside, but it's not easy. It's not always up. You don't have your mum around. There are young kids who are in academies across the world, and it's not simple.
Yeah.
It's tough. So I don't have a preference for any models. I like merit though, and I want to say have more and more clubs and let them move ahead on merit.
Yeah,
let them work hard for it. The American system understands a closed league. It helps them raise the profile. It's good that they're all clued into a certain team. And they have multiple teams. I don't think anybody follows, like, let's say, for example, if I'm a basketball fan and I'm living in Texas or Austin, they'd have a local team, which is a college team.
Yeah.
Then they'll follow one, which is the basketball team close by. They follow sports and they regularly go consume it. Baseball has, 70, 80, 90 games or 100 games a year. How much of baseball can you watch? But they go there, season tickets. $100, $50, and things like buy a hot dog worth $10 there, spend money on parking. So they really do consume sport. It's good.
What are your thoughts on coach education? Because I've worked at BBFS for a short period of time. I've done an internship there. I think they're doing some great stuff when it comes to coach education in India, in promoting, let's say, from within and giving their coaches whatever facilities they can in that sense. But what are your thoughts on coach education in general and how India is structuring coach education, let's say in a footballing context?
As I said, it's one of the single biggest driver of the sport in India and in any country. When you look at, say, Japan, why is Japan successful? I don't know if the stat holds true right now, but it did a few years back, that they had more pro-licensed coaches in one country in Japan than the rest of Asia put together. So that's their intellectual capacity. And a lot of those coaches don't work in clubs, they work in universities. The university system is also very robust, very competitive. So everybody can't get into a club, they play in a university. I go to coaching badges myself. I've done them in the past just to learn.
Yeah.
I'm never going to coach professionally, but today you ask me to organize a session, I could do it. And it helps me to organize things otherwise as well. My opinion on coach education is make it open-ended. Today we have access to so much of information. If somebody is really interested, they can always buy into it across the world. We have to make it accessible. We have to make it structured and organized. More importantly, make it affordable. I think that would be 2 or 3 things I wish we could do. I think in the past 10 years or AFF has done a great job. They've done a great job because there might be a debate on as to how good coaches those are, but they've got more
coaches,
number of
a lot more
people
coaches,
who have badges. Even if they grew only by 20%, they've grown. They know how to take sessions. They know that kids don't need to run around. Maybe there's so much with our personality growing up that we still shout at them, and we shout at every player. We want to micromanage because we see that on TV. But it's it will be one of the things that drives forward. BBFS, I know for a fact that they always have a focus to have more and more number of people take up the sport from a coaching standpoint of view. A lot of former players, etc., are also introduced into the sport. Teaching overall it's something that can take one and many human beings up in terms of their learning. Can't stress enough. The more coaches we can get, and if we can take the coaches' intellectual capacity higher, and I don't mean that they're dumb people, but I mean
in a technical level,
tactical levels, we're not there. We don't look at a game holistically. We are reading, but that's also because we introduced them late. We were introduced to it late. We didn't, if you asked anybody, how do you set a field in cricket? How do you tackle people? They'll tell you how it's supposed to be tackled because it's come through a period of time where we understand sport really well. How does it reverse swing, outswing, in swing, cutters, everything is there, but that might not be there. How does the wicket play out? Football, we're growing that, and if we can tackle those 2 things better going forward and make it affordable so that everybody buys in. They spend a lot of time and effort into coming and doing their coaching badges. If it's very expensive and they don't clear, then we have a lot of people leaving either the sport or not doing any further in coaching, and this period has been tough on them. It's especially people who are self-employed, or it's been tough. So I hope things get better for the coaches.
Yeah, maybe a model that BBFS have. I'm not too sure about it, but maybe if they have a bunch of coaches, if they let's say if they hire 50 D-licensed coaches, all right, and if they see them having a lot of, they see them doing well in the sessions, maybe sponsor the coaching wise.
I've had a lot of coaches with me in the courses that I've done who've come from BBFS, and BBFS have taken their expenses.
So I think that's probably a better way of going about it. Something in relation to your book, because I want to talk about that as well. So you talked about you wanting to see India in a World Cup. So was that the rationale? I haven't read it yet, but was that the rationale behind writing the book?
No, it wasn't. I'm not a writer. I didn't want to write. My co-author Shantanu and me, we met up and we spoke about football. He wanted to know more. So he said, why don't we meet for half an hour? We met for half an hour, which turned into 4 hours. And one of the conversations, because he'd written, he's an author, he'd written a couple of books. He said, why don't we write something on Indian football? And I laughed at it and I moved away. And that conversation kept happening for about 6 months.
Okay.
At the end of it, which I said, not a bad idea, let's do it. And we wrote that book. I think this was around the 2017 World Cup. But as things turned out, it wasn't released then. It was released much later on in 2019. But no, the idea was not World Cup, but we also wanted to trace a little bit of history, because we do have a fair bit of history with football in India. And what happens is, over a period of time with generational changes, people forget that. So everybody will say, oh, football doesn't work in India. But not so long back, football worked in India really well. We were doing really well. We were up there. The problem with the sport is, it is truly the global sport. And while we are moving fast, there are countries that are moving at express speed. So, you're growing, but the others are moving so fast that you can't catch up with them.
Yeah.
So that really is the problem with the sport. But I know World Cup was never I didn't write the book because of the World Cup.
Yeah, but I think it just touches upon some of the things you've been talking about, that we need more of these outlets. Let's say books, what have you, TV, that people can almost see and then just have that, because I feel these sorts of things are what, let's say, inspire people in some way, shape or form. Because even in my scenario, I'm a Liverpool fan myself, and I like Liverpool because of the way they played. And that's because I watched them on TV, or maybe if I could have read something about them, or could have seen something, let's say a TV clip on them, maybe that could have driven my imagination as well.
True.
So I think there is nothing more powerful than that.
Well, if you really look at it, why would we sitting, I don't know how far Liverpool is from here, or from me when I was in Pune, why do we support it? I mean, there's no logical reasoning behind. I can understand if somebody's from Liverpool and his father or mother took them to watch Liverpool every week. That's how the generational changes. Why do we follow it? Technically speaking, why are we so passionate about it? If you talk to fans across and say, we are not that good, and they're like, who's we? Say, Liverpool, Arsenal. I said, how are you Arsenal? Right? Now I support Liverpool. Why? Because I had a cousin in Norway, and Norway supports English Premier League in a big way.
Yeah.
Back in late 90s, 2000s, the sport had just come into, earlier we would only watch the World Cup. So you would have World Cup teams, right? So I had Italy World Cup team, somebody would have. So why, we don't know. Similarly, why do we support these teams? No idea. But once you start following, you get passionate about it. Those are the only players that you know. You consume more information. You have Michael Owen, who runs past people like they don't exist. When he scores a wonderful goal, when he scores for England, you say he's a Liverpool fan. You're happy. It makes you happy. Sport makes you happy. It gives you joy, and then also it gives you misery as well, right?
I think we, like, sorry to cut you off, but I think we support it because it's good. Like, the fundamental essence, it appeals to us in some way, because
right. It's that various reasons, right? You play sport. Where do you watch it? What do you want to do? You want to play like Michael Owen,
right?
But actually you run like Jamie Carragher. So, but that being said, if we had a local team that was doing well, we'd much rather go and support that local team.
Of course, yeah.
If you were living in Genk, or you were living in Brussels, or you were living in Ghent or anywhere else, those guys, they like Liverpool and they like all the other teams, but they like their own teams more, right? If you were living in France, or you were in Marseille, or you were in Lyon, Lille.
It's the same thing, not just because they are in close proximity to you. That's of course a massive region, but because maybe their fathers were gang supporters.
Correct. And you belong to that place. See, human beings love to be in tribes. It will stay on till the human race ends. That you want to be a part of something. That's why we are virtually part of United, and we are virtually part of Liverpool, because whenever you meet somebody, there's a connection, right? And you're like, oh, Liverpool fans, we're together. Arsenal fans, they're separate. United fans, we fight. We like tribes. We want to be. That's why. And sport is such an inane sense of, raw energy. That's what people get together for. But I'd love to support and go to matches. I remember we were in Pune, and Pune FC started. We would go there, we would watch, and we'd say, this is the thing, we want to follow it, right? And live, when you watch the match live, even if the quality of the football is not great, the raw energy is brilliant.
Yeah,
I really, you really love it.
I think the point you raised on tribes, I think that's true. I think it's more about finding meaning in something. True. And be it whatever, be it religion, be it politics, be it something we want, that's the same thing. We want to find purpose to what we're doing.
Yes. And life overall.
Yeah, life. Yeah, exactly.
Find purpose in life
overall. I mean, I think people are sort of fed up with me because I keep quoting. So there's this philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche, who talked about this. He said that God is dead. But what he meant by that was now it's over to the secular world to almost find meaning in the world.
Correct.
And if we don't find it in let's say the right places, and what he meant by that, if that doesn't cause violence or what have you to other parts of society, then society would go into disarray. And I think just sport, politics, and all these other factors that we give so much more importance to is because of that.
True. Very true.
Yeah. Just ending off, I know the viewers sort of like this particular question. Do you have a few book recommendations that have inspired you in the way you look at the world?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, number one, number two. Number one, Soccernomics.
Yeah.
Number two, Moneyball. I loved reading. I can't claim some books. I loved Abramovich's autobiography. For some strange reason, out of all of them, that's the one that's.
Wait, you mean Carlo Ancelotti or
Abramovich.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Sorry,
I am
mixing it up.
Zlatan.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Did I
Yeah.
pronounce it
No.
wrongly?
That's fine. No,
I'm
Zlatan.
Zlatan. It stood out for me.
Okay.
I didn't like the guy before that, but when you see where he comes from, then you kind of realize how good is he. But my all-time favorite, I love Michael Lewis. The chances are I always end up reading the same books. Dennis Bergkamp's autobiography is nice as well. I read a lot of these sports guys and what they come up with as well. Leading was very good.
Yeah.
Although by Mr. Ferguson, but leading was quite good. There's one I'm reading right now, which is about geopolitics.
Okay.
Now, strangely enough, that name is very confusing.
Right. Okay.
So but it's fascinating. I like geopolitics a lot, right? How it talks about nations. Now, our concept is with boundaries, and then once geopolitics start, they talk just flat land, and they talk about how things get impacted. So I love reading that. Does it say Prisoner's Map of Geography or something of that sort?
Right.
Fantastic book. Not read it completely, but reading it through. But these are 4 or 5 books that I'd say read Soccernomics.
Yeah.
If you want to be in sport, you want to be in anything in sport, read Soccernomics. It's a book like no other. Moneyball, the movie is great because Brad Pitt looks great and he acts. Everything looks simple. But if you want the book's even better.
Yeah.
It talks.
A lot more technical.
Yes. Pirlo was one of my favorite players. I read a lot about him as well. Is the book a great? No, it's not. But Pirlo was very good. I read a lot about Djokovic and his diet.
Okay.
How he turned himself around. That was very fascinating.
Is he still on a vegan diet?
He is.
Okay.
I don't know if it's vegan, but he's gluten free.
Right. Okay.
I think he's vegan as well.
Because I know he at a point he was vegan and then he started to eat vegan plus fish.
Okay.
Or I don't know what's he.
I don't know his current status.
It's fascinating though. Yeah.
But it's fascinating, and an athlete, what it can do by focusing on diet, which is not normal. Right? Somebody will tell you want to be a tennis player, eat as much as meat as possible, or eat pasta, eat this and things like those. So he had a lot of things to say about food. Right or wrong, I'm not saying that. To each one his own. Bodies are so different that what you consume might work, might not work, right? And to each one his own. But I found his work on his eating.
I find nutrition as a topic to be. It needs so much more research because I feel that wherever we are with nutritional science, I don't find it complete because I've tried so many diets on my own. I've tried the keto diet. I've tried going vegan as well. I've tried so many, but I still feel that you can't put a finger on saying that this is something that works for someone. And I still think there's a lot more research to be done.
100%. And maybe you're a little more skilled or learned in diets and nutrition. The layman, and let's say I'm a layman, I don't know what happens with food once I put it down my mouth. There are lots and lots of philosophies going around saying it enters this, nobody knows what happens. You don't know what happens once it enters the stomach, what happens to the bolus, what happens when it moves around, how it gets absorbed, how does it become fat. You cannot see it. And then there are philosophies by dime a dozen. What happens to your body? I mean, it's strange. Some strange things happen with strange people. And there's still so much to kind of discover. Human beings are so different. What I eat might be very different. What I've eaten all my life is so different than you. So
and I think
fascinating.
And I think something that's not often given as much relevance is genetics.
True.
So people born in certain areas of the world have a totally different way of looking at food, and even if
with food, there's certain things that you can follow blindly, which is to eat local.
Okay.
It can never be bad for you, right? If something is growing in a weather that you were born in, very rare chance they'll be bad. Right? So if you eat jawar, bajra, etc., if you're in Maharashtra or anywhere else, it can't be bad for you. Similarly, there are fads to eat quinoa and to eat this. I don't know how that works out, right? Eat seasonal, eat local. For one, I love ghee.
Right.
Now maybe somebody's going to look at me and say, it looks like you eat ghee, but I like it. There's also mental conditioning. You cannot hurt yourself beyond a point where you cannot mentally take it. Right? Food also kind of affects you mentally. If I was being paid to look a certain way, yes, I can understand it. If I was an athlete and I had to do something wherein I had to make sacrifices, I would understand it. But if it's me, I've also got to wherein my mind has to work a lot more than the others. I'm not saying that it's lesser, but I just got to do a lot more mental work than physical. Then I've got to give my mind and my body that mental peace as well. So there's some food brings all of that to the table.
Look, Nikhil, this has been fascinating. I've enjoyed the conversation thoroughly. Is there somewhere you'd like to point the viewers towards, your social media perhaps, or something else you'd like to plug? Feel free to.
No, subscribe to your channel. We are Zlait, Zlait, and I'd like all of them to come have a look at what we do. I am on NK Sky on Instagram. Maybe Twitter is NK Sky as well. See, it's quite confusing. So feel free.
That's
to
fine.
follow
I'll
me.
be linking everything in the show notes, but for sure, thanks for coming on again.
Pleasure's all mine. It was great talking to you. Thank you for inviting me.
No worries. See you guys. Bye.
Bye. One shot. My God. I keep stopping people.